Good evening, everyone. The time is 7:03. It is April the 29th, 2024, and I'm going to call to order the Board of Directors of Upper Dublin Legislative Meeting for the month of April. Ms. Evans, if you could kindly call the roll.
Ms. Evans.
Present.
Mr. Held.
Present.
Ms. Iannetti.
Present.
Ms. Redding.
Present.
Ms. Sherbier.
Present.
Mr. Sirota.
Present.
Dr. Thomas.
Present.
Mr. Wallach.
Present.
Mr. Warschauer.
Present.
All present, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. It may feel like summer outside, but it is actually only still April, so we have a lot of work here to do in our school district. Before we get into our agenda tonight, I wanted to give the community a quick update on one matter. As the community knows, the board had agreed to do some professional development in the area of anti-bias training some time ago. Dr. Smith was kind enough to evaluate some options in that regard, including suggestions from the community and otherwise. And the board and the district engaged an entity called Stand With Us to provide anti-bias training specific to anti-Semitism. And that training happened on March the 20th, 2024, just after our last legislative meeting. We had two speakers there that came from Stand With Us that spoke about the history of anti-Semitism, definitions of anti-Semitism, and providing some input into issues that arise, especially in a K-12 scenario with this in this area. I want to thank Dr. Smith, first of all, for facilitating the session. I think it was a very valuable session for all of us there. And that leads me to my second point. Dr. Smith, as you know, we had already said that the executive leadership team and the administration said that they would like to participate with the board, which the board welcomed, and it was great. And then Dr. Smith broadened that even further and invited essentially the entire administrative structure of Upper Dublin, from the buildings to the departments up to the executive team. And I don't have a head count, but there must have been 40 people there. And I want to thank everybody that attended. Everybody in the district in an administrative capacity was there that evening. It was great to see. It was great that everybody was that interested. And I think it's a testament to the interest, the care, and the dedication of our administrative leaders to our children and to our community. So thank you to everyone that was there, and I wanted the community to know exactly what transpired in that session. With that, I will close my opening update and remarks. We'll next move on to our reports and presentations. First up will be our Student Government Association report. We have two people here with us tonight. We have Anthony and Izzy, both. Before we begin, I believe this is Anthony's last meeting with us. So Anthony, thank you for everything you've done and all the information you've provided us over the last months, year, whatever it's been. And I want to add that last Friday, there was an event called the MCIU Legislative Breakfast, which is an annual event where the MCIU brings together representatives from school districts. A lot of legislators are there, and they give an update on legislative efforts in educational scenarios and kind of what's going on both in our county and in the state. Mr. Held and I had the pleasure of having breakfast with Anthony, who was very happy to join us at that session for the MCIU. And Anthony, thank you for taking the time to go with us. We hope you found it informative. And Izzy, I think this is an example of how we really, as a board and a district, want to include our board representative in other avenues and activities like that. So as those things come up, we will certainly keep you in mind, and we hope you can join us for things like that as well. So with all of that intro, Anthony, the floor is yours.
Perfect. I should be used to this by now. But yeah, I just wanted to take a few words just to thank everybody on the board. It really has been a pleasure working with all of you the past couple of months. And I've definitely learned a lot. And for that, I just want to thank every single one of you. I know you all are working hard, and it just means a lot that, having a student on the board means a lot because, as a student, a lot does happen at the high school, and just having a person like being the representative for everyone comes a long way. So for that, I just want to thank everybody. I also just wanted to thank Mr. DRC and Mr. Smith, who are our advisors for student government. They definitely put the hard work, making sure that everything runs smoothly and just always checking up on all of us. I also just wanted to take the time to recognize the 5 seniors on the steering committee and just talk a little bit about their post-secondary plans. So firstly, our president, Hannah O'Neill, will be attending the University of Delaware this fall, and she will be majoring in secondary education. Vice President Jane Hillman will be attending Columbia University and Trinity College, and she will be majoring in earth sciences. Our treasurer, Emmeline Copeland, will be majoring in data science, and she will be attending Carnegie Mellon University in the fall. Our secretary, Seth Boaz, will be attending the University of Pittsburgh, and he currently is going in as undecided. And then finally, I will be attending Westchester University in the fall, where I will be majoring in early childhood education. So I officially passed the torch down to Izzy. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, and happy spring. I hope you've all been enjoying the nice weather. April has been an exciting month for Upper Dublin students. To start off, many students participated in national competitions in foreign language. Many of our Cardinals placed well in these competitions, with a special award for junior Matthew Gregg, who received a perfect score on the National Latin exam. And in more Cardinal wins, the future business leaders of America went off to states in Hershey with great success, sending 4 students to nationals and a first-placed win by Jake Levine in current events. And our Cardinals have been crushing it this month, with 2 students qualifying for the National Chemistry exam, and many Cardinals placing in the Scholastic Art and Writing Philadelphia Regional Awards competition. In other news, the AP exams start in 1 week, May 6th, and will end Friday, May 17th. Underclassmen should also give a final look at their courses for next year, as May 1st is the last day to change their courses for next year. Here at UD, we have recently said bonjour to our French exchange students and au revoir to our seniors as they headed off to Disney for their class trip. And send a big merci to our teachers as we celebrate Staff Appreciation Week. Finally, in sports news, the boys tennis team has just won the SOL Liberty Division, and the girls lacrosse team is currently 7-0 in their season. Amy No has also been recognized as the Philadelphia Regional Player of the Year. Congratulations to all those in UD this month making moves, and a big thank you to all staff members.
Thank you to both of you for those updates. Anthony, we obviously wish you the best at Westchester. We wish all seniors the best in their future endeavors. So thank you for those updates and those words. Very much appreciated your efforts here for us. With that, we have our superintendent's report. Dr. Smith.
Good evening, everyone. I also, I think we're all on the same page here, want to recognize Anthony. Anthony, I think I will always remember you because you were the very first Cardinal that I met when I came here the night that I was appointed, and you welcomed me, and I greatly appreciate that, as did, everybody else. But I hope in 4 years, when you come back, that maybe you will become a Cardinal again and be an employee. But we have a little gift for you, a nice little Cardinal tumbler. There's some little candies in here, but you might need this in college. Put some coffee in it, keep yourself awake, and keep plugging away, but thank you. I have a few other celebrations and accomplishments to share. I did want to let the public know that our school district was selected by the Pennsylvania Department of Education as one of only 4 locations in the state to film a school breakfast promotion video because of the participation in the Governor's School Breakfast Challenge. It's a very exciting privilege for Ms. Deli, our food service director, the entire department, and of course our district, and we are proud to show off our collaborative work between our department as well as our principals to make breakfast successful and accessible in all of our schools. Recording did occur in late April, and as soon as we have the video, which I don't think we'll see until fall, we will certainly share that. We also have been informed that Upper Dublin has received the Community Leader Award from the Baden-Powell District of the Boy Scouts of America. This award is presented to one outstanding non-scouter who supports scouting within the Baden-Powell district. And the recipient of the award can be an individual or an institution. And we are home to several Cub Scout packs and scout troops. And I believe Mr. Held will be accepting that in about another month on behalf of the board. And on Friday, the Upper Dublin Tree and Shade Commission was present at Fort Washington Elementary School to plant a tree in honor of Arbor Day, and fifth graders from all of the classrooms and staff were present for the planting. They learned about the importance of trees, and the most exciting part was they got to shovel dirt. I highly doubt they're that excited at home if their parents were to ask them, but they really enjoyed it, and I got a few shovels in there as well, but we are grateful for this partnership. Mr. Wallach already noted the professional development. I echo the same thank you to our team, and I think it just sends the message of how committed we are to diversity and equity here in the district, and we will continue those trainings along those lines. Safety and security, I do want to just, call out the incident on Friday at the high school. Certainly, safety and security is at the forefront of our minds. Unfortunately, our high school did have that anonymous indirect communication that required some investigation on Friday. But through our collaboration with the Upper Dublin Police, we were able to quickly determine that the threat did not pose any harm to our students or our staff, and were able to continue with a typical day. I do want to also commend the swift response of Mr. Schultz of the high school administration, our district safety coordinator, and the Upper Dublin Police, as well as numerous other administrators that assisted me that morning for working collaboratively to assess the situation and coordinate our response. I also thought it might be appropriate to remind the board, safety and security is one of my goals this year that you'll be evaluating shortly in the next coming months. And I thought for the public, just to highlight a few things, there are things that we have done in the last several months to increase awareness and effectiveness. This is the first year that Upper Dublin does have an administrator that is in the position of a safety coordinator position, and that is Mr. Shea Creamer. He is now on the administrative team. His experience in law enforcement has been a welcome addition to our team, providing insights and training for our employees. He also has recently facilitated tabletop exercises with our administrative team, guiding us through conversations of how might we respond to various situations. We have previously increased, at the board's approval in the last couple months, the number of security officers within our high school for the remainder of this year. And we also just most recently at our finance committee spoke with the board about recommending bringing our third-party contracted security officer service to be district employed employees to provide that service, which we believe will help us establish greater relationships with our students and our staff, provide some specific training to public schools, and ensure a greater level of accountability. Finally, Mr. Creamer has done his own audit of safety and security of our facilities as part of his transition, but we have also partnered again with the board's approval into an agreement with the Montgomery County Department of Public Safety to conduct safety assessments of each school facility and provide recommendations, and I believe that they are starting at the high school in the next week or two. I can confirm the timing of that. I certainly recognize that instances like on Friday can cause anxiety and concern for us, and it's unsettling for our students and for our families and employees. Please know that we will continue to be steadfast in our commitment to student and staff safety. We take every report seriously, and we will continue to seek opportunities to continue to grow in this area as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Smith. Next, we have our first opportunity for public participation. This is for agenda items and included presentations and items on the agenda. If anyone wishes to address the board, please come up and state your name and city of residence, or affirm you are a resident or taxpayer of the district, and Ms. Evans will time your 4 minutes.
Order at every meeting. Hate to touch it. Okay, like that. Anita Brister, resident and taxpayer, Fort Washington. I missed a couple meetings, but I did try to watch some of it at home. I didn't get all of it. So I have some questions about the additional positions, because I feel like I might be missing something. I have a friend was gave me last month, or the most recent finance meetings packet, so I'm going by that. It may be the exact same thing or similar to what's in tonight's agenda, but I've read this more carefully than this. So if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me when I'm finished. I'm counting a director of communication and marketing, an assistant. These are the requests, and you're going to create a position, and then you might, sounded to me like the little bit of discussion I did here from finance, that you most likely would then fill the positions. And if you're not, if your intention is not to fill all the positions, then please clarify that. But anyway, Director of Communications and Marketing, an Assistant Superintendent, an Administrative Assistant, 2.5 positions for a Safety Officer, I guess it's 2.5 Safety Officers, 1 Social Worker, 1 Special Ed Teacher. 4 elementary assistants were requested, but it seems like you're going to go ahead with getting 2. If I'm correct on that, let me know, or incorrect. I definitely appreciate Dr. Smith's statement tonight about safety and security. I'm glad to hear the district is on top of that, because there have been an awful lot of problems in the last 2 years that I don't recall as a parent, and I was pretty involved when my kids were here. I don't recall as many fights going on in the high school or anywhere in the district as there have been in recent years. So the safety officers, we probably really need. I don't know that we need 2.5, but we do need to do something, and it sounds like you've already taken some action, so that's good. But anyway, I'm counting 7.5 positions and 2 assistant educational aid positions. I could be totally wrong, because as I said, I didn't watch or attend those last finance meetings. What's unusual to me is to create this many new positions when enrollment is flat. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. I am pleased to see, it's sitting on the chair over there, because one of the first things I was thinking with a little bit of the meetings I did watch was, where's the description? And I do see there's a more detailed description in tonight's handout of the assistant superintendent's position, and I think maybe one other thing, I don't know if there was another description in there, and I will read through that, and maybe it will answer some of my questions. But again, enrollment's flat, and it's been flat for a really long time. I do understand there's new people on the board. There's also experienced people on the board, and I know board members, I mean, it should be one of the things you're looking at. I hope you agree with me. Enrollment's been flat for a very long time. I know before Dr. Yanni left, there was supposed to be an updated enrollment report. Am I past? Oh, 46 seconds. If that's on the horizon, let me know, because I would love to be here for that presentation. In other words, I don't think there was a company hired to do an updated enrollment report to see if there's going to be some big increase, more births than usual, whatever. But unless there's some report that says we have a big increase, I'm not understanding this many new positions. I do totally understand some of them. I would say, my personal opinion, you can discount it because I understand when that happens. For assistant superintendent, I would personally like to see that request come back next year at this time. And I do know when Dr. Yanni first came, he worked with the current administrators, and there are a lot of them, and he did some restructuring. In other words, maybe changing a little bit the job descriptions of certain people and taking on this, but giving up that. And I thought he told us several times he saved a lot of money by doing that. And I'm not even saying you have to do that, but I'm saying that when enrollment's flat, this is a lot of new positions. And if I'm wrong on that number, feel free to correct me. And I think the assistant superintendent should be looked at next year at this time, not so quickly this year.
I am not seeing anyone else approaching, so with that, I will close the first opportunity for public participation. Dr. Smith, would you like to respond in any way?
Yes, I would, Mr. Wallach, thank you. Just to clarify, the positions that were in the Finance Committee presentation were recommendations from administration. They are currently included in the budget presentation of expenditures from the last Finance Committee. We are still adjusting both revenues and expenditures before we bring back the proposed final budget in May. The request this evening that the board is on the board agenda to provide the opportunity to approve certain positions allows us to begin posting. It certainly does not bind the district in any way before they approve a budget. So they could at some point say, not approving that position, we want to pull that out. It just allows us to get out, to advertise it, and to begin the process. But certainly, we would not have hires in place before a board would approve a budget, which ultimately approves those particular positions. And the only other two things that I will mention is that these requests are not based upon enrollment. Enrollment would drive the number of general education teachers, and we are not requesting any additional staff in that area. These are driven entirely by needs that have been identified. Some of them are shifting contracted services into district employees. Some are funded by grants, so it's not all of them are adds to the existing budget. And job descriptions will be provided in the board agendas for any positions that do not currently exist. So for example, the assistant superintendent. However, a position like a special education teacher, that already exists, so we're not attaching the job description because it's an existing position. We're just adding one more or requesting one more of that particular position. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Appreciate it. We did have an updated demographic study. Somebody remind me, we talked about it a couple months ago? February in finance. Thank you, Mr. Leckman. I thought so. Just couldn't remember when. Any other comments from any board members? Ms. Evans.
I think, Dr. Smith, you touched on this, but just to, stress it even further, if I remember correctly, it's the 2.5 safety officers and the social worker are all positions that we currently contract out for. So again, the pay may be slightly different, but they are baked into our budget at least somewhat. So we're bringing those positions in-house. So that's 3.5 of the however many it was. So.
That is correct. So there is some increase to make them internal employees, but not the full add of them because there was already funds in the budget for that contracted service.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. We'll keep moving on in our agenda. Next up, we have minutes. We have minutes from our March 18th, 2024 legislative meeting that have been dispersed to the board. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. A second? Ms. Evans, thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Next up are our Education Committee recommendations. Ms. Sherpier.
All right, there are 4 items. All 4 were discussed at the Education Committee meeting, although in conferences I see a couple of changes. Do you want to address those first, or shall I make the motion to approve?
So if I could just call out, and I apologize, Mrs. Sherpier, I sent an email earlier today that many of our board members may not have seen. Item A, we are going to ask the board to table the IEP writing software. We are still awaiting the final rider and agreement and would like Mr. Diazio to have an opportunity to have more conversations with the vendor. So if we could table that one until May, and I will defer to Mr. Hoffman on conferences if there were changes there.
One of the conferences was an addition for an AP to add on to the ones that we did discuss. And this is for a project-based learning series. And then the BCBA, due to the timing of that and it being an urgent need for that training, we wanted to get that approved before the May legislative.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. So without item A, I'd like to make a motion that the board approve items B, C, and D on the Education Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Sherpier. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second, John.
Mr. Held, thank you so much. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Next up is our Finance Committee recommendations, and Mr. Sirota.
Thank you. We have 8 items under the Finance Committee recommendations tonight. All of these were discussed in detail at the Finance Committee meeting 2 weeks ago. And so I would like to make a motion to approve items 6A through H.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sirota. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Ms. Evans, thank you. Questions or comments?
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge in particular item F is a donation from Giant Supermarket, and I want to take this opportunity to thank not only Giant Supermarkets for that donation, but especially all of the customers of Giant Supermarkets who contributed to that program. There were some matching funds from Giant as well, but it wouldn't work without the participation of individuals making purchases at Giant. So thank you very much, and that's it for that one.
Appreciate that, Mr. Sirota. Definitely. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Motion carries. Next up, we are up to our Personnel Committee recommendations. Ms. Redding.
Good evening. There are 6 items up for approval on the personnel agenda. I would like to make a motion to approve items A through F with position descriptions attached to A, B, and E.
Thank you for that, Ms. Redding. Do I have a second to that motion? Ms. Iannitti, thank you so much. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Motion carries. Next up, we have our pupil services recommendations. We have 2 educational agreements on the agenda tonight. The board has been apprised of both of these agreements in advance. So I will make a motion to approve items 8A and B on the agenda. Is there a second to my motion? Mr. Sirota, thank you so much. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you so much. Our last recommendations is our Policy Committee and Ms. Iannitti.
We have 3, A, B, and C, tonight under policy, and we discussed them at length this month, and I would like to make a motion to have them approved.
Thank you for that. Do I have a second to that motion? Dr. Thomas, thank you so much. I think it was Dr. Thomas, did I have that right? Yeah. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. We have no other business this evening, so we will move to our solicitor's report and our Sunshine Act announcements. Mr. Diazio.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. The Sunshine Act announcement for this evening, the board met in executive session tonight prior to this public meeting. There were 3 items discussed. Number 1, the 2 educational agreements that the board just approved a few moments ago were discussed with the board. Number 2, the personnel agenda and the items on the personnel agenda that the board just approved were also discussed in executive session. And then the board also had a discussion on the compensation and terms and conditions of employment for the district's Act 93 administrators for next fiscal year. The board is also going to meet in executive session immediately after this board meeting to discuss the annual superintendent evaluation and also matters related to the assistant superintendent position that the board just voted to create this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diazio. Appreciate it. Next up is our second opportunity for public participation. If anyone would like to address the board, this can be for any topic. Please come up, state your name, city of residence, and/or affirm you are a resident or taxpayer of the district. And Ms. Evans will time your 4 minutes.
Anita Brister, Fort Washington. Okay, first back to Mr. Wallach's opening statement. I'm glad that you gave us an update on the anti-bias professional development. Sadly, around the country, I'm not necessarily saying this is happening in Upper Dublin, I hope. The anti-Semitism seems to be getting worse, not better. especially on college campuses. But anyway, just something, I asked about this back when the anti-Semitism meetings were happening, and I'm just curious if there's any follow-up. It's a curriculum issue. I am fairly certain my kids both read The Diary of a Young Girl, Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. I think that's the official title. And it's it's just a curriculum question. I never understood why it was taken out, because I know that a generation of kids read it in our district. And then at a meeting where the anti-Semitism was discussed, a parent who actually, she and her husband bought 300 of the books to give to the middle school because there had been an anti-Semitic incident. This was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. But they didn't use them. So does anybody know why was it taken out? Is it ever going to be put back in? That's the question. My other favorite topic, tax increases. So I've been around a while, so there's been years when we had budget deficits. And they had, the superintendent and the board had to find $3 million or $4 million in money to close that deficit. And there were some very difficult meetings like that. We haven't been in that position recently, and that's a good thing. So I do have concerns when the proposed tax increase is 2.8%. We have a pattern going on here where millions is being put into capital reserve, and then we keep getting tax increases, and I consider 2.8 to be pretty high. I think it's really important for board members to know the tax history. I did notice it's definitely included in the budget documents, because when you buy a house, you buy it for the long term. And I've lived here since 1991. Many things I love about Upper Dublin. The tax increases are not one of them. Since 1991, but actually it precedes that because I know neighbors who have lived here longer. There hasn't been 1 year when we had a zero. And there's rarely a year when we just go to maybe to 1%. So anyway, my overall point here is I don't have any objection to putting money in capital reserve. I understand what a capital reserve fund is for. It is for capital projects, future construction projects. But the amount that Upper Dublin is putting in year after year after year, and then giving us what I consider high tax increases, I don't think is really appropriate. I think there needs to be a compromise there. Lower taxes, or even zero some years, and then some millions into the reserve. I would like to commend 2 board members who I happen to agree with their comments from the last meeting. So one is Alima. I watched parts of these meetings. You said, I'm paraphrasing here, so if I don't get your words exactly right, please pardon me, but you basically said that you're torn because it's a tough ask to ask the community, to ask the community to save for the future, to put that money into a reserve fund where you get to save our tax dollars for the future. It's a tough ask when many in the community are having a hard time putting into their own savings after they spend all, they look at their own household budget. So I think that was perceptive. I'm glad you said that. I'd also just like to say I really was glad that Mary Beth asked about the year-over-year spending. I appreciate that you asked that. Looking over the budget documents, I do see that, Andy usually does include a 5-year look back so we can all look at that and calculate. But I think that's really important for the community to know. The answer was 3.2% year-over-year spending. It's really important for the community to know it. It's really important for all board members to know it. So to me, 2.8 is too high, and it's unnecessarily high. And I think you'd have way more support for the millions that are going into that capital reserve if there'd be a compromise on lower taxes.
I do not see anyone else approaching the microphone, so I will close our second opportunity for public participation. I will note that we did not receive any written comments in advance of the meeting. One thing, just so anybody listening at home or in the audience knows, budget discussions are continuing. There was not a vote in any way, shape, or form on a budget tonight. We'll be at the finance meeting in May, and then ultimately there will be a budget vote at June's legislative meeting, so we still have a couple months to go. With that, Dr. Smith, anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add right now.
Board members, any other questions, comments, responses? Okay. We will move on to our informational items. We have our enrollment report. We have our liaison committee reports. Do any board members have anything to add to their committee reports? I will add on behalf of the Ed Foundation, everybody just remember that the medal ceremony is coming up on May 15th. Tickets are on sale. It's a wonderful event. We get to celebrate medal winners. The students who were all nominated, plus our 2 winners, Gus Platt and Julia Axler from the student body, Dr. Ortiz, our educator of the year, Ambler Flower Shop, the business/nonprofit of the year, and for Citizen of the Year, somebody who's near and dear to many of us up here at the table, Dr. Art Levinowitz. So we hope that everybody can make it to medals on May the 15th. Anything else from the board? Okay. We have our monthly committee meeting minutes. We had minutes from March 6th for the Education and Policy Committee and March 13th for the Finance Committee. And our last thing is our upcoming meetings. We have our next Education and Policy Committee meetings this Wednesday, May 1st at 6 o'clock, and then we'll segue into policy with 2 meetings this week because we changed this meeting to move it back a week, which is why that's happening. Finance is on May 14th at 6 o'clock, and our next legislative meeting will be Monday, May the 20th at 7 o'clock here in the Cardinal Room. With that, thank you all. We are adjourned.